This video is sponsored by Acronis.
1 exabyte of data is created every single day. That is 1 million terabytes created by humans daily. It is so much data that 90% of all data that has ever been created since the beginning of humankind until now has been created in just the past 2 years. It's crazy. And more data means more data loss. Data loss costs companies and industries billions of dollars every single year. In fact, 70% of all small businesses that have a major data loss event go out of business within just 2 years following the incident. And it's not just the business world. I mean, who amongst us has not made an oopsie, deleted a family album of photos, lost a research paper because we put it on a hard drive that got corrupted? It sucks. But the reality is that data loss is 100% a matter of human error. While equipment breaking might be expensive and inconvenient, it is negligence of us, the people, that results in unrecoverable data loss. And people like you and me, there's a really easy method to make sure that this doesn't happen. It's called the 3-2-1 rule. 3 copies on 2 formats, 1 of them offsite. Okay, so let's take this category by category. We know we need 3 copies, but what's the first one going to be? Well, congratulations, you're already doing it. That's just any file that exists anywhere. Woo! This is your production version. So let's say I'm editing a video on my laptop here. All my footage is stored on the laptop. This internal SSD on my computer, well, then that's going to be my first copy. If you're a master's student and your entire thesis is stored on a USB thumb drive, and this is what you carry to and from other computers to continue writing it, this is your first copy. What's important to know about the first copy is that it is your production version. It is the master. It is the first that you edit, and backups are merely replications of this original file. Knowing that, it's ideal that you never have to use your backups because sometimes they're not always concurrent with the original file. So you should try the best you can to never have to need a backup. And so using something like this, a USB thumb drive, which is generally very cheap and not very reliable and small and easy to lose and your dog can eat them, not the best place to store your original master first copy file. An internal SSD on a laptop would be a much better location because these use much more robust SSDs. The NAND flash chips are generally higher quality, but you can still have issues here. What if you run a piece of software that tries to free up some space on your local disk and you delete half your video footage because you're like, oh, those are big files. Oopsie, that's gone. What if you apply a firmware update and it's completely botched your machine and you have to reformat your drive? Not ideal. So I prefer a first copy that by its very nature has a little bit of redundancy built in. Most important files on my home and work network I store on network attached storage, a NAS. This is a device that has built-in redundancy. There are 6 hard drives here, but I can lose 2 of them at any given time without losing any data. So one of these, whoopsie daisy, there's a failure. It gets pulled out, it gets ruined. I can pop in a brand new drive and stick it back in, and it will rebuild the entire architecture once again so that I have, again, 2 drives that I can lose at any point without losing a single bit of data. Now these are a little admittedly expensive, and you don't need to go out and get a 6-bay NAS to find yourself in a happy place. I might even suggest you go online to Amazon and buy a $90 1 terabyte SSD. Create a mirror of your internal boot drive in your laptop or on your computer, and you have a 1-to-1 copy. If one of your SSD fails, well, you have the other SSD to rely on. Built-in redundancy to your first copy is a good idea. So then, what are the other 2 copies? Well, those are your backups. One of these backups must be kept off-site. And it makes sense. If there's a fire, flood, etc., you don't want that to be all under one roof. That's no bueno, so get it far away from you as you can. You also want to use 2 separate formats. Huh? Well, if you're a big business, there are a lot of options for you, depending on how much you're willing to spend. Here at Snazzy Labs, we actually use a storage format that's very often used by big businesses. We just do it at a much smaller scale. And that is this. LTO, or linear tape open. This is a little cassette filled with magnetic tape, not that dissimilar from an 8-track or a VHS, what have you. And I've also got a machine here that I can put the tape into, and it becomes writable and readable storage to not only our network server, but also individual machines on our network. Pretty cool. Here's the thing about LTO and why it's used. Information density. This tape right here can hold 12 terabytes of data uncompressed and 30 terabytes of data compressed. And what's most impressive about it is that it does it in a package that's very tiny, that's very inexpensive. These tapes cost about $55 each. Now this is a last generation tape. The newest generation, they're a little bit more expensive, about $130 per tape, but they can store 18 terabytes uncompressed and 40 terabytes compressed. And that is 1/3 the cost of a comparable hard drive. But cost is just one small reason why they're actually used by big businesses. The primary reason is that these, if stored properly, are a very good archival storage medium. These can last up to 40 years when stored properly without any degradation or loss in quality and information. The same cannot be said of a hard drive. Now, while you may have experienced booting up a really old machine in the past and having the hard drive come up and everything still works, they're not really guaranteed to last more than about 5 years on the shelf. These, at 40 years, are a much better option, especially when they're cheaper to boot. So then why doesn't everyone use them? Well, because they're not really that practical for anything other than storage. Their name, linear tape open, seems to imply that you have to read the tape linearly, and guess what? You do. Well, you can write to these pretty quickly, sequentially, at about 380 megabytes per second, even faster than a hard drive. Reading from them, and reading in an order that's not front to back, is very, very time consuming. It often takes minutes to locate a single file and then several minutes to recover said file. It's not really practical for day-to-day storage operations. It's mostly practical for, oh no, we lost an entire bank of servers and now we have to offload the entire 12 terabyte tape over the course of several hours. So that's pretty much why you don't see them in your home. The other reason is cost. While these tapes themselves are pretty cheap, the readers are very much not, starting at around $5,000. So then how do I get two different storage formats for home and personal use? Well, I am a big believer in, yes, optical media. What are those? It's been a while since you've seen one of these spicy circles, huh? Well, these are Blu-rays, and the reason I like using Blu-rays is because they are very data dense. The cheapest, lowest end bargain Blu-rays you can get are still 25 gigs uncompressed, and the highest end Blu-rays, triple layer, which are the same Blu-rays that are used in the 4K UHD Blu-ray format, those hold up to 100 gigs uncompressed. The cheapest discs, these are about $1 a piece, a little bit less. And the nicest highest end discs, those are still under $5 a piece, making this a very economical way to back up. Furthermore, the drives themselves have come down significantly in recent years. These things used to be prohibitively expensive, but this reads CDs and DVDs, and it writes Blu-rays, and it can read them, and it does it in any format, all the triple layers, 4K UHD, it'll do it all. This thing is $70 at Best Buy right now. A great deal and a really affordable way to back up. It's pretty simple. You just pop your blank disc in. I guess there's some people that might be watching this video that have never gone through this process in their whole lives. That's crazy. It makes a bunch of weird clicky noises. That's all the high speed working. So you gotta wait. Oh, and then here right inside of macOS, it says you inserted a blank BD. Blu-ray discs are natively supported from within macOS, which is really quite cool. So I can go to BDR Backup, which is a folder I've created that has several gigs worth of stuff inside of it. I can click this little menu and say, burn to disk. It's then gonna say, which disk do I wanna burn to? And at what speed? I'm gonna say maximum possible speed and burn. And it starts to take off. Data's flowing at maximum speed, which is not very fast. You could burn DVDs and CDs really quite quickly, but Blu-ray discs can still really only be burned at 6x speed most of the time. This says a 16x speed on the case, but that's read speed, not write speed. So in reality, it doesn't really matter. It's gonna be fine. It's not the fastest format in the world, but it writes faster than you might think. And the best part, again, is it is so super cheap. If you buy into the hype of a special kind of Blu-ray disc, M-disc, these use a glassy carbon layer that promises hundreds of years of archival storage, which is pretty impressive. That's way longer than any other storage medium, including tape. And again, those discs are a little bit more, but we're still talking $6 to $7 a disc. So this is a really economical way to back up. Every few months, spend an hour rewriting your entire photo library to Blu-ray disc so that you can have something to fall back on in case you have to rebuild from ground zero. And this is perhaps the most important part of this entire format, in my opinion. Nobody Nobody wants to steal a disk. If your house gets robbed, your NAS is going to get taken, your computer's going to get taken, your LTO tape drives will get taken. That stuff is valuable. CD with photo library written on it, no thief's going to take that. And that's probably the best reason to use this format. It's cheap, it's easy, it's widely available, and ain't nobody want your Blu-ray. It's a great option. So let's talk about that offsite backup, because you can kind of kill two birds with one stone here, making this the most convenient primary backup. Ain't nobody want to be dealing with Blu-rays or LTO. It's not that convenient. If you need to, they're there, but you should really have something that's better before then. And that's where cloud storage obviously comes in as the true winner. The problem with traditional cloud storage providers is they do not want you using their services to back up your files. And this is known by the fact that they're typically pretty expensive per gigabyte. And if you've ever tried to upload multiple gigs at a time, even like 10 gigs at once, they will massively throttle the speeds to the point where it's basically unusable. So on the other end of the spectrum, you've got services that specialize in backup. The problem is they don't want you sharing files with other people. It's typically pretty difficult to recover a single file, and they can also get expensive because they typically charge you per seat or per computer. If you've got multiple computers, you're paying multiple licenses. See where we're going with this? There's really a service that should exist in the middle, and today's sponsor, I think, does that. It's Acronis Cyber Protect Home Office, formerly Acronis True Image. And let me show you why this is cool, but first, we've got to install it. You go to the website, you click Go to Downloads, you download the file, and then once it's downloaded, it just shows up in your Downloads folder, you open it up, the app opens up, and you press Install. Easy as that. Once you've got Acronis Cyber Protect Home Office installed, it is extremely easy to use. I've been running it for about a month and a half on my work computer, which yes, is just an M2 MacBook Air. I keep this thing in clamshell mode underneath my desk and then use it as I would a desktop. It's fun. Now, while this app is simple, I don't think that it's too basic. It does everything you could want it to do. I can see here that this Mac is backed up. I can see how much storage is being utilized on the Acronis Cloud from my backup, so 189 gigabytes. And then I can see what that data is comprised of, pictures, videos, audio, etc., which is handy at a glance to see if there's anything that looks off. I can go into my settings tab here and choose to exclude certain folders from being uploaded if I wish, which is great. But my downloads folder is just filled with crap that I download from the web, old PDFs and DMG app files. I don't need those, so I choose to exclude that. You can also schedule when you would like your backup to run and how much bandwidth it can utilize while backing up. This is handy because while I back mine up at 1 a.m. every night and I'm gone, if you live somewhere where bandwidth is extremely limited or you're backing up during the day, being able to set a bandwidth cap is quite handy. Additionally, cleanup. Acronis allows you to version, which is so nice. Similar products do not permit versioning, and if they do, they don't usually allow it for more than a few days. This lets you select any number of versions that you want to retain. I have it set at the default, which is 20, and this is great because if you change a file like your research paper and then a few days later you're like, oh crap, I screwed that up, that's not as good as the version I had before, I can't undo it. This is what that is for, right? You can go back and recover the file as it was before you screwed it up. And then you can also choose to delete versions once they've hit a certain period of age. There's also encryption. Encryption is really great because, well, it's pretty straightforward. It encrypts your entire backup on the cloud so that nobody can access it other than you. If we go into my activity tab, we'll see that, yeah, it's running pretty much every night. 1 a.m., 1:04 a.m., 1:03, 1:08. It's doing my whole backup in just 3-4 minutes? No, again, this is versioning. What it does is it looks at everything that's on the Acronis Cloud. It looks to see if the MD5 hashes are the same. If the file hasn't changed over the last day, then it just leaves it. If you've added a new file or changed its location or changed its contents, then it will update itself on the Acronis Cloud. And so what that ultimately means is your backups, after you've done the initial backup, only take a few minutes. And recovery is even easier. If I click this tab, it's going to go, hey, we need your encryption password because, again, I have chosen to encrypt my backup, and all backups, you should do this. It takes a little while to decrypt the backup, but once you've done that, you're going to see that there is an entire file tree that shows not just my home folder, but the entirety of the drive. I mean, look at this. I've got my mount folder, private. This is a bunch of stuff that I don't even typically have access to unless I go spelunking down into the disk. And this is really great because what it effectively means is that you are uploading an encrypted image of your local drive in its entirety, making a full system restore actually quite viable, which is pretty cool. I can choose which version of the backup I want to restore. So we'll say yesterday. I can go into Quinn Nelson, I can go into desktop, and hey, check it out, Quinn.silent, I don't have that anymore. So let's click recover, and within a few seconds, it will appear on my desktop recovered as if it had never disappeared in the first place. Quite handy. Not only can I update this computer, but I can also update and keep backed up other computers and other folders. If you don't want to update, upload the entirety of a drive, you can just select one specific folder on a machine and it will pop up in your Acronis backup without issue, and I can recover it very much the same. And hey, check it out. That recovery file has been completed. There it is on my desktop. Quite handy. That's not all Acronis Cyber Protect Home Office can do, however. If I go into disk cloning, this is great. I can plug in a USB hard drive or SSD and I can make a one-to-one copy, bit for bit, bootable version of my hard drive. This is a great way to do a 3-2-1 backup because it is exactly the same as what is on the contents of this machine. There is shareware for the Mac and probably for Windows that allows you to do this, but on the Mac at least, it's quite expensive. This is included in Cyber Protect Home Office and it works really, really well. You hit the button, it says, what drive do you want me to clone your drive to? And it takes a couple hours and then boom, it's done. And you have a perfect one-to-one copy of your Mac on an external hard drive. Very cool. Archive is not something I'm going to use frequently, but it is pretty neat if you have a limited drive size, like one of those 256 gig MacBooks. If you don't have room on your local disk for some of the crap that you're not choosing to upload to the Acronis cloud, you can basically say, hey, I'm going to delete these files from my local computer, keep them in the cloud, but get rid of them off my machine. You drag a file in, it uploads it, says, yeah, you're good to go, and then you can delete them from your local drive, freeing up space. Quite handy. And then if we go into my account, we can see that I'm only using a small fraction of the 5 terabytes that are allocated to me, despite backing up 2 separate machines and a separate folder. That might sound like the end, but there's actually even a little bit more. If I go into this protection tab, we can see that this offers malware protection for both Windows and macOS. It scans your files, it can detect and quarantine immediate threats, which currently I don't have any, but it has in the past. And most importantly, in my opinion, it detects future potential vulnerabilities. It's not malware, it's not a virus that's actively infecting your computer, but something that might be a problem in the future if you don't take care of it. So if I look at my vulnerability assessment, which was done early this morning, I can see that, there were a couple affected products that are running on Electron that are a critical security risk. If I click on the little I here, it's going to say, yeah, that's from Blackmagic Design Incorporated. And that's because Blackmagic Raw, which is an application I have on this machine, runs on Electron, but it's using an outdated version of Electron for Mac OS. It's one that is insecure, it's one that has vulnerabilities, and what this is telling me to do is, hey, go see if there's an update for Blackmagic Raw Player available that uses a more current version of Electron. If it does, I can download, install that, and that security vulnerability will go away. Or if I'm really worried about it, I can choose to uninstall that application altogether until Blackmagic gets their acts together and patches it. This is a really great way to view, in my opinion, virus protection, especially when you're on a Mac and it's not traditionally something that you have to worry about that often. Vulnerability assessments telling you future things that may be an issue is really, in my opinion, quite an excellent feature. But it doesn't stop there. Despite being available for Mac OS and Windows, this app is also available on mobile for iOS and Android. Upon entering the Acronis mobile app, I am greeted with my backup from last night, where it backed up all of my photos, videos, contacts, calendars, and reminders from my iPhone, which is pretty cool. It does one huge backup first, and then after it's completed that, it does little tiny backups as you add stuff in the background, even if the app isn't running, which is great, and it makes it, in my opinion, a pretty viable alternative to iCloud. It's a lot less money, that's for sure, or if you already pay for iCloud like I do, it's a great secondary off-device backup. Not only can you back up and restore anything that is on your mobile device from the Acronis mobile app, but you can also browse all of your backups from your computers. This is all under the same price tag. This doesn't cost anything extra. It's included, and it does a great job. So if I go into my S1 review, which is that folder we backed up, I can go into exports, I can tap this file, and in a couple seconds, it might be a while because, oh, no, that was pretty quick, it loads, and this video is playing back. I can then tap the share sheet and send this to my friends or whomever I want. I can save it to my photo library and more. That was from my computer, backed up to the Acronis cloud, and back to my iPhone. So as you can see, combining off-site backup and cloud storage and anti-malware all into one solution for both desktop and mobile is quite compelling, and it makes Acronis about 55% less expensive than buying all of these services separately. But the most important takeaway is that backups, and hopefully you've learned this by the end of this video, are important. You should be doing them. Do not forget the 3-2-1 rule. 3 copies in 2 different formats, one of them located off-site. Let me know what you do to back up. Do you think this is all overkill, or if you had an experience that has turned you towards the truth? Let me know in the comments down below, but most importantly, and as always, stay snazzy.